Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the Talking Deen podcast. I'm your host Majid, and today I have with me Brother Rash and return of Brother Ishti, our resident historian. Brothers, welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum. How's it going, guys?
Alaikum salam. Alhamdulillah, all is good.
Good.
SubhanAllah, we are officially, depending on when you started Ramadan, we're officially in the last 10 days,
Subhanallah.
and it's gone kind of quick, hasn't it?
You just don't realize how quick it goes. You think it's going to be 30 days, how I'm going to make it, and then you get to 20 days and you're thinking, when did it start? It's just goes in a blink.
You know, like even I was chatting to my nephew yesterday, walking from Tarawih, and he was talking about Paul Pogba and that he was fasting during the game against who did they play?
Roma.
Roma, right? And basically, when he was interviewed afterwards, like, how did you do it? And he said, Allah gives us strength. And it's just one of those things that, subhanAllah, a lot of people won't appreciate it. Certainly non-Muslims, they won't appreciate it. The fact that, when you start this month, it's like, how are you going to be able to fast? And, just to add, not even water. How are you going to be able to fast for 30 days? But it's one of those that the 30 days go by and you don't even realize that actually most of this month was spent, sacrificing those things which are normally halal for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think that's one of the reasons why you look forward to this month and also why you miss it once it's gone.
Do you think it's quite interesting that, in the past, football players used to use being professional athletes as an excuse not to fast, whereas recently I've been noticed quite a few players actually are fasting and playing. Is that kind of an increased awareness of the importance of their deen, even though they're professional athletes, or is that just...
To be honest with you, I think that, in the past, there was certain times where I remember the Turkish team. There was a Turkish team a few years ago. They were all fasting, and both teams, they stopped for iftar and stuff. But as individuals, maybe they have been fasting, but we just never knew. I didn't know Pogba was fasting on that night.
No. Well, and even on Monday, was it Monday night the other week? They stopped the Premier League game, didn't they?
But that's what I mean.
No,
they stopped that one, so you knew. But this time, I didn't know Pogba was fasting or not.
No. Well, what it is the previous ones we've heard have been in like Turkey or a Muslim country or something, which is fair enough. But I was surprised when it was like Premier League doing something.
Bro, Leicester is like a semi-Muslim country. The amount of Muslims that are there, but yeah, you're probably right. There's that more awareness and respect to the officials and stuff like that. They are okay with that, with doing that. So but certainly, going back to the issue of Ramadan and the strength and stuff like this, it's just something which comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, really. There's no other way to describe it. Ishi, what do you think?
No, I definitely agree. When you want to do something, there's nothing going to get in your way. And to be honest, it's only the first day where it's a bit difficult, where you feel a bit dehydrated, and after that, it becomes easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just part of your life.
I remember there was a few years ago watching this video when the fasts were long in the UK, but I think it was in Norway or one of these Scandinavian countries, and there was this, I think it was Bengali family actually, husband and wife, and there they were fasting for 23 and a half hours. So basically they were getting half an hour of iftar, right?
Yeah.
And so
all together.
it was crazy. So they're interviewing them, and they said, how do you do it? And he said, Allah gives you strength. You know what I mean? It's just probably one of those things, isn't it, that when people think of Ramadan, especially nowadays, when you think of Ramadan, you think of fatigue, you think of people counting down the minutes. But history testifies that this has been a time when Muslims have kind of regrouped, kind of rejuvenated, and the spirit of Ramadan has sort of like motivated them to do many things. So we're talking about people playing football or us guys just fasting, but in the past people were marching in desert heat and fighting battles even whilst they were fasting. So compared to that, playing a football match isn't isn't too great. But nevertheless, respect where it's due.
Credit where credit's due. Sometimes we're a bit, we're a bit harsh on people, but I going, oh yeah, it's just a game of football. But you know what? It shows progress. I'm just going to
100%.
look at it positively. It shows
100%.
progress, that more people are appreciative of the importance of it, even in whatever field you are. And if the progress is positive, which it is, then hopefully it will just continue to get better and people become more aware.
Yeah. And yeah, of course, man, of course. And it's something which may even influence non-Muslims as well. You never know.
I remember thinking about the Muslims in Saudi, like in Norway or Iceland or wherever it is, and I thought to myself, like, why don't they just move to Saudi Arabia? And this weird thought came into my mind: what if those extra hours of reward? And then who would it be more difficult for? The one who's getting more reward, or who's better? You just don't know, do you? The one in Saudi Arabia, or the one in Iceland or Norway or wherever it is.
Yeah.
So it just depends on how you look at it. And at the end of the day, we do it for the sake of Allah, not for the sake of our stomach. So
Yeah, sure.
perspective.
100%.
But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not always looking at it as something which is negative. In fact, it could well be that those people that are fasting almost a day, that this is a blessing upon them. But it's just the way you look at things, innit? So cool, man. Inshallah, guys. Let's get into today's topics. And the main topic we want to discuss today, and this is the reason why we have our resident historian with us today, is the issue of what is known as the Armenian Genocide. And I will do genocide because I have my own views on this. Anyway, so what we see is on April 24th, Joe Biden became the first president of the United States of America in sort of acknowledging that in 1915, the Ottoman, what they say empire, but what we would know as the Ottoman Khilafah, committed a systematic massacre to wipe out the Christian Armenian population. Okay. And this is what we want to discuss today, because there's many questions that we need to ask ourselves. First one is, what actually happened? And the second one is, why now? Because this sort of motion of this being recognized has been there for a long time, and in fact, 30 countries around the world today already acknowledge this as being a genocide. So, what's the big deal here? And what should Turkey's response be, and stuff like this. So there's a lot to talk about. So, but the issue, I'm gonna first come to you, and maybe you can just give us, a brief description of what happened, what the issue is, and then we can start addressing some of the issues of why, when, and what.
I think, to be fair, the first thing I did was when you mentioned this subject, I wasn't 100% sure what is meant by genocide. And I just thought it means just killing people, right? But if you look at the UN definition, it's genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial or religious group, such as killing of members of groups, causing serious bodily harm. But the point is, there has to be intent. So, for example, the Nazis had a clear intent to destroy the Jews. And it's documented in their own documents, in the, like, for example, the Wannsee Conference. So when we're talking about genocide, there's the intent, and then there's the mass killings. So you're out to kill Jews, you're out to kill Armenians. So when we say the Armenian genocides, the Ottomans perpetrate the Armenian genocide, you're saying the Ottomans aim to kill all the Armenians.
And would you say, yeah. So to, not just to kill, to wipe out.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's important. And Ishi, if you carry on with that point, it is very key for anybody who's listening to understand what the terminology is important. It's not just about, because we hear about wars and things all the time. So to actually understand what it means by genocide, I think that is a key point that Ishi's making.
Yeah, man.
If you look at the Ottomans, they're a very interesting era of history, and they sort of composed like multi-ethnic sort of groups. So you had the North Africans, the Balkan states, and the way they used to rule was they had this millet system. So basically, the traditional elite of those people used to rule, and this worked for 800 years. Now, a lot of the sort of advances by Europe, and in particular people like Napoleon, Russia with its warm water policy, it wanted ports that gave it access to Europe. They start attacking the Ottomans and trying to get nation states to emerge. The other issue is you've got Europe. It had this small period of rapid political change and rapid technological change, and it brought it to the fore of everything, technologically, political esteem, etc. And it sort of pushed the Ottomans out the picture. And most importantly, economically, because the Ottomans were a center of trade commercially, whereas now it's all within Europe. Now, basically, the Ottomans, after the siege of Vienna, I actually forget the date of it, they started to decline. And that's why most historians say the decline started to occur, because there was a lot of infighting as well. And one of the ideas in the West was the idea of the nation state. Before, there was empires and ethnicities. And after that, there was like the German state. There was all these states emerging. There's an identity based on your ethnicity. So if you're a Pole, you'd be a Polish person. If you're a Turk, you were Turkish, if you know what I mean. Now, what this meant was, so you've got this weakening of the Ottomans economically, but you've got a lot of national uprisings. And these included the Romanians, the Persians, the Serbians, the Montenegrins. And what this basically meant...
Greeks, yeah.
Yeah, and this is what I was going to say. And there was many of these. And for example, if you look at 1821 to 1829, you had the Greek movement for independence. And there was this feeling of there was harsh treatment by the Ottomans because there was too much high tax, because the Ottomans were actually financially struggling, so they taxed their people more. And by seeing what Napoleon did in Egypt and Syria, it gave them confidence. Okay, if this land can be taken, why can't we take it? They're already weak. And also there was another movement. Russia saw itself as the protector of Christians. And when I say Christians, Orthodox, the Eastern Orthodox Church, they're not like what we know as Roman Catholics and Protestants. So it saw itself as protectors. And in one of the years, in one of the wars, it built this treaty of Kuchuk-Kinaji. Basically, what it allowed it to do, if any Christians were struggling or feeling oppressed, it gave it permission to intervene. And it used this as a reason to constantly attack the Ottomans. Now, Britain and France. Now, what happened in Europe is they had this. They liked the balance of power. Everyone's got a bit of power, so rather than attacking each other, let's go attack other lands. So Europe had this thing called Concert of Europe, and they liked the balance of power. So they didn't like the idea of Russia taking all of the Ottomans. So they were always in this battle. Russia would advance a bit forward into Ottoman land, and Britain would stop it. So, for example, the Greek revolutions is a really important example of this. So the Greek Christians, who are Eastern Orthodox, they rebelled. They wanted independence. This allowed the Russians to intervene with that treaty, and Britain and France said, no, you can't use this because it's going to have too much Russian influence. So they helped Greece achieve independence. And there was many movements like this. There was several Russian-Turkish wars, and there was this constant decline. Okay. Another problem that the Ottomans had is they started to rely on external powers. So, for example, in the Mediterranean, for their naval presence, they started to rely on France. What that meant is France got privileged access to the Levant, like Syria and all these lands. So, yeah, there was a sort of very serious weakening of the Ottoman state. Also, there was a lot of infighting. So there was a person called Muhammad Ali Pasha in Egypt, and he wanted to gain hereditary rule. So for example, rather than the Ottomans ruling, so there's this idea of the Ottomans. There's all these provinces, they're ruled by their people, but the overall leader is the Ottomans, and they have to listen to their overall rule. Muhammad Ali Pasha wanted his family to rule Egypt. And he also wanted Syria, so they had to quell that. And often what would happen is they used a lot of treaties to do this. Now, if you go into Armenia, Armenia is actually the first nation state to accept Christianity, not the Romans, it was actually the Armenians.
Okay.
So they are very, very ardent Christians. Now, in 1875 to 1878, what happened was the Great Eastern Crisis, where all this, like Bosnia-Herzegovina, Bulgaria, all these countries wanted independence all at the same time, well, one after the other. And what happened was, during a lot of these Russian Turkish wars, they'd taken a lot of this Armenian land. So there's this pressure from external powers to give autonomy, and the Ottomans were forced to after one of the Russian Turkish wars. However, the Armenians did not have a national movement. It only occurred in the 1880s. And there's this idea of the Armenian question: what is going to happen to the Armenians? Everyone else has got autonomy. What's going to happen to the Armenians? And there was this idea that the Ottomans were persecuting Christians. However, what they were doing was employing higher taxes because of their poor financial state.
Financial situation.
Now,
so moving on to 1915.
There's an important point here, right? The Armenians they built this national idea, and there was two important political parties, the Dashnaks and Hunchaks, and they started to rebel. So not only was this idea that the Armenians going to want political autonomy, they actually start rebelling and causing trouble. And there are 40 particular rebellions that cause this question: who are they allied with? So there was a massive problem. Not only was that, only that, there was this Young Turk Revolution where this Committee of Union Progress took over and brought about a parliament. So the Khalif was in name only, and there was the three pashas in control. And they had a lot of Armenians in their parliament. However, when it came to World War I, the pashas asked, what are you going to do to the Armenians? Can you incite the Russian side Armenians to fight against them? Because Armenia is situated between Russia and Turkey, and that land is called the Caucasus, right? So if you've got uprising in Armenia, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to end up fighting the Armenians and the Russians, because the Russians are definitely going to come into Turkey, because that's what they want to do. So there's a massive concern. Now, there were sort of quite a few massacres, and which we could go into later. But it's important to know at this point, the Armenian question wasn't solved. Now there's this idea of this siege of Van, where 10,000 Muslims allegedly were killed by the Armenians. Now this is a disputed situation, so it could be higher numbers or it could be a lot lower.
Is this when the Russians came into the Ottoman state?
Yeah,
no.
Van is was part of the Ottoman state.
What happened was, at this point, the Talat Pasha, one of the three pashas of the CUP, he decided what we're going to do is, a lot of these intellectuals, we're going to lock them up. We're going to lock them up and bring them to Istanbul. And that occurred on the 24th of April 1915. That is the actual date, and that's exactly what happened. The killings didn't occur then. Now, just before, not only to add their financial strait, the 1912 Balkan War, 850,000 Muslims had been expelled from Europe into Anatolia. So not only did they have financial issues, they had a massive refugee crisis. If you want to, I'm not sure if that's the correct term. So basically, Talat Pasha decided, you know what, we can't handle this situation. We can't have this liability on the Caucasus. So he decided to mass deport Armenians.
Yeah.
And what that involved is taking the Armenian population and moving them to Deir az-Zor, which is in Syria, which is a hard slog. Now, what is stated is each person was allotted 150 grams of bread, which is not a lot, to be fair, and it was hard marching. And this is what is called the Armenian Genocide, because a lot of people died of dehydration and starvation. Now, what I haven't been able to go into, a lot of the preamble and before and during, there was a lot of massacres on both sides. So, for example, the Dashnak massacre, I don't know if you remember, that was one of the political parties of the Armenians. They killed 12,000 Azerbaijanis who were Muslim and were with the Ottomans. They slaughtered them, and these were civilian populations.
Yeah.
Is it also correct that they killed some Armenians as well? Because those people who didn't want to revolt or rebel against the Ottoman state as well, this is where, again, this is disputed, but they killed some of their own because they were all wanted to be united in their rebellion against the Ottoman state, which is the reason why the Ottomans, had to do something when they were fighting on multiple fronts.
Exactly. And this was a very, very, very difficult situation. And you've got to remember, the Ottomans were very weakened at this state. Could they really afford to be attacked? You've got to remember, I'm saying that, they were fighting on the Caucasus, but Britain was fighting them on Gallipoli.
Gallipoli, yeah.
They were fighting on the Persian front. They were fighting on 3 massive fronts. And they were struggling militarily already. And they were reliant on Germany to provide their naval presence. They were relying on a lot of German help as well.
I think the main point is that it's not necessarily, sorry to interrupt, it's not necessarily about whether anybody tries to justify Turkey's actions or Russia's actions or the actions of the Armenians. I think the issue at large is that there was conflict going on. And at the time, many people were killed from all sides. I think it's important to understand that there was loss of life on all fronts for every, for all people. The issue, I think, that Maj was highlighting at the beginning is that, why are they calling it a genocide, and why now? I think that's something we do need to try and get to the bottom of, because the history itself and the area and how the situation arose, I think that is, we could talk about that for quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a messy situation, wasn't it? I mean, if you look at just say when the partition of India and Pakistan, it was a messy situation, and about 1 million people died. So at the end, people died from all sides, and even the Turks, even Erdogan, is quoted as saying that it was what happened was like an injustice or something on this side. So they're not saying that people didn't die, but what they're saying that it was in a genocide, right? Now, moving on and sort of bringing this together, because some people might think, look, it's history, okay? It's history. Things happen in history. So what's the big deal here? Firstly, why does it matter whether Turkey acknowledges whether this was genocide or not? And secondly, why now? Why is Joe Biden taking the decision to do this while people in the past, Obama promised that he needed, right? Trump said that his party views things differently, right? But what you got to understand is this is a NATO member. They're meant to be on the same side, right? So what do you think? Why now? What do you think's changed from? Has a change happened in America, or has a change happened in Turkey, which has brought us to this moment when it's been acknowledged? What do you guys think?
So I'll give you my kind of 10 pence worth on that side. Yeah, it was back in, I think, it was during Trump's time, probably back in 2019, a couple of years ago, when both the House and the Senate both kind of put forward that the recognition that this is a genocide and we want to call it a genocide. And like you just highlighted there, it was Trump who turned around and said, this is not something that, we want to pursue, or it's something that they didn't want to go forward with. But the fact that the House and the Senate in America both agreed, that means that there were some plans from a number of years ago. Yeah. And then when Biden, before, when he was on his campaign trail, that was when he, there was an interview and they asked him, what are your foreign policy ideas and stuff if you become president? And that's when he started talking about being, anti-Erdogan, and he started discussing, not being happy with the situation in Turkey, wanting to support some of the opposition movements. And there was this funny comment when he was doing the interview. He was like, "Oh, not via a coup, not via a coup." He said it like 2 or 3 times to kind of, when you say something that many times, it's like that's probably what you want to do, because not happy with.
Try to do anyway.
Exactly. So with the Gulenist and all of that we saw. But what he highlighted is that the Kurdish issue and the fact that not happy with the direction that Turkey is going. So it's quite clear now that Biden's in. And another thing that's quite important is Kamala Harris as well. And remember in previous podcasts, we've highlighted that even though Biden is the president, Kamala Harris actually she's got quite a bit of power as well.
Okay.
And there's quite a lot of backstory to Kamala Harris and quite a few of these Armenian advocacy groups, and that they were funding her campaign as well. So there's some kind of there's, as we know with all of these things, there's complete political dimension to it. This is why I'm not even overly a fan of going into this concept of this is a genocide and this isn't a genocide, because when they decide which one's a genocide, it's purely down to political interest. They probably felt this was a genocide for many years, but because of certain good ties with Turkey, they've decided that, okay, let's not call it a genocide now because Turkey are towing our line for us. As soon as now it feels like Turkey are not towing their line, have moved out of their orbit, okay, now it's quite convenient. Let's now call it a genocide so that they're back on the back foot, especially when there's rifts within Turkish politics as well. How convenient it is that those rifts are there, by CHP, the Kurds, the breakaway factions from within AKP. Yeah. Now those rifts there, now America are not happy with the direction Turkey is taking in the region. All of a sudden, how convenient that let's call this a genocide. So I think that's some of the reasoning behind why they're highlighting it as a genocide now rather than previously.
Ishi, what do you think?
There was something that I just remembered, what I just thought about when I was getting my headset, and basically a lot of what Erdogan's done, he's revived the idea of the Ottomans, and it's not something to be ashamed of. So if someone is genocidal, like if someone had done genocide, they're evil, right? The Nazis were pure evil. They decided to kill Jews for no reason except for the fact they were Jews.
But they killed a lot of people, didn't they?
Yeah, but they had a particular, they had a conference for Jews that were going to properly go kill them, right? That's why it's called a genocide, right? However, with Erdogan, he brought a lot of prestige to the idea of the Ottomans with, dramas and bringing them to the fore. And it brings a certain nationalistic pride. What if that nationalistic pride is linked to genocide?
Yeah,
I think it's trying to attack that idea. I think there's one of the immediate implications of.
That's a really good point, by the way. I think that's key.
If you say that you've done genocide, right? It's symbolic for the Armenians because there is a pain there, and rightfully so. A lot of their people got killed, and I believe some say 90% of the population. So that's unbelievable, right? But the Turkish government would have to apologize. It would have to recognize its crimes. It would be a criminal in this case.
It's tarnishing Islam, isn't it? This is the other thing. We talk about Ottomans, but that tarnishes Islam as a political entity. Islam has such a decorated history. And when we compare it, and I'm sure we're going to talk about some of the genocides that are not even called genocide that the Americans continue to commit. But what it does is they can look at the Muslim, the Islamic civilization, the Khilafah, and go, look, actually, we can't find genocides and we can't find oppression. So there's this one that we can hang our hat on. It's the Armenian one. Let's use that one, and let's not give the context behind why it happened. But if we can tarnish Ottomans and therefore we tarnish Muslims, then how convenient, because then we can hide away from our own genocides in a way.
Yeah, and think of the phrasing as well. It's not Armenians, Armenian Christians. So what are the adversaries? Ottoman Muslims.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. If you're enjoying this podcast so far, please make sure to subscribe to all of our socials, especially YouTube. And if for any reason you're not enjoying this podcast, then please make sure to contact us on Facebook or Instagram and let us know what we can do better and how we can improve. Jazakallah khair.
That's how the way the language is given, isn't it? And you got to remember, if this is accepted, what about the Greeks? What about the Romanians? Were they genocided? It opens a new door.
Yeah. And I think both of you guys have made some really solid points, man. I think what we do see is that what Rash was saying is we see that there was a time when Turkey was in line with everything America was doing. It was a really important ally in the Cold War. After that, it was a strategic partner, even with the legal state of Israel. They had really good ties. And what we see is over the last few years, we've seen President Erdogan moving away now. Turkey is definitely moving away, where they've gone against the plans of America in Syria, for example, establishing the Rojava state and so on. We see that clearly. So we can see, you can understand why Joe Biden is going to do this. But also, I think the other points that have been made in regards to linking it to the Ottomans, because in the past, before people like Erdogan came on the scene, or when the secularists were in power, in fact, the Ottoman period was probably even looked down upon in the sense, like, for example, Sultan Abdul Hamid II, he was known as the Red Sultan, and it was portrayed as a time when the Turks were backward, and now they had their sort of revolution and secularism was brought in and they progressed, right? So at that time, for you to announce this as being a genocide, it didn't really make too much sense. If they wanted to do it, they could have done it then. But now, going back to what the point Ishi's making is the fact that what we see a revival within Turkey, not just on the Islamic lines, but we see a revival in the sense of them having pride and looking back at the better days under the Ottomans. Okay, so what a better time now to actually incriminate the Ottomans of committing genocide and then opening other books of history, whether it's in the Balkans, whether it was in places like Sham or North Africa, and try to link the Ottomans and Islam in a way to being barbaric, genocidal. So I think those points are fantastic, and I think it's worth now maybe for our listeners and viewers to also then, because most of them are going to be Muslim, is to say, look, as Muslims, we feel like we're always on the back foot. We did a podcast about a month ago about confidence in Islam, the fact that we always feel like we're guilty until proven innocent, and this is another episode where when they link it to Ottomans, even though in reality there was a lot of the Young Turks on the scene, but when they link it to the Ottomans, it's linked to Khilafah, is linked to Islam. So as Muslims, should we be on the defensive or should we be on the offensive? And now I think it's worth revealing some facts and figures which actually show that as Muslims, we should be saying, wait a minute, what's that saying? The kettle calling the pot black or something. Is that right? Did I get that wrong?
The pot calling the kettle black.
Okay.
Yeah.
The pot calling the kettle black, right? Or there's another saying I watched, I seen once in an Indian movie long time ago, but I'm not going to say it in Hindi or Urdu, which is those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones on those on others, right? So when it comes down to issues like this, let's present some facts and figures to our viewers on, in fact, who are truly the genocidal maniacs. Is it the Muslims or is it the Western powers with their ideology of secularism, liberalism? So I mean, at the end of the day, Rash, you mentioned the America, and I'm sure you're going to probably start off about Native Americans.
You know what? This is funny that it's not funny in the slightest, but if we wanted to do a podcast now on all of the genocides, and remember, we don't need the term, it's terminology. We don't need to talk about genocides, but we want to talk about killing of innocent people and massacres year after year after year. And remember, not history either. We're not talking about history. To this day, to this very moment, there's probably bombs falling down, especially on Muslim lands. If we wanted to do a podcast on all of the massacres and all the killing that America, just America, I'm not even talking about some of the other Western nations, has carried out, then unfortunately our listeners would be sitting here for hours and hours and maybe a few weeks, maybe, because it would take that long to go through it all. Yeah, I think it's very important for the Muslim to appreciate that, okay, they might sit down for the Armenian one, they might sit down and go, let me look at the history, let me see if I can defend the case of the Ottomans, because that might be the default position because you feel like you're defending the Muslims, right? But actually it's not necessary. Just all you have to do instead is look at America's past record. This is a nation that was built on the massacre and therefore the genocide of the Native Americans. What is it? I've read so many there's been different stats been thrown around, anywhere between like 17 million and as high as 200 million. Of Native Americans being killed when that they initially got to that so-called discovered the land of America. Yeah,
And here you're talking about systematic.
If you're going to call something genocide, then that's genocide. You just go there and you go, oh, there's people here. It's like you find a house and you go, oh, I really like this house, but there's people inside. Let's just wipe them out. And forget a house. This is a whole land with so many people.
Actually, just to add, Rash, that, like when the Americans, when Joe Biden announced this, the Turks hit back. And one of the things they said was that, that 70 million, they gave the figure of 70 million Native Indians were slaughtered in America.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then you need to consider it from the point of view this is the nation that dropped atomic bombs. How are these really the people that we should be listening to? Are these the people that can be on? They dropped 2 atomic bombs on, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and you're talking about what, 350,000 dead at least. If
that was initial.
That's initial. And imagine
people afterwards.
And that's another key point, isn't it? Sometimes it's very easy just to point at numbers of people killed. What about all of the people that continue to suffer year after year of all of these depleted uranium, Agent Orange, and all of these things that America have dropped in, especially in Muslim lands? And yet, it's not just about the number of people who die, it's the number of people who continue to suffer year after year, time after time. So I'm not going to give them all because I want you guys to add some as well. But I think as a Muslim, just my point is that we should look at some of these. And if someone wants some quick stats, I'll do a plug. Just go and watch. We produced a video, I think it was last year. You remember when Trump came out and said that America is the most virtuous nation in the world, and he talks about their roots when they started and how they're the best nation ever to exist to mankind. We created a little video and we included a lot of these stats on that video. That video got I wouldn't call it banned, but you know how YouTube locks the video down so people can't see it because it's got content in it which is sensitive. That stops it from going viral. That stops it from getting reach. So anybody who's got time should go. It's only 6 or 7 minutes long, and it highlights quite a few of these massacres and these genocides.
Actually, you know what? I think you're right in the sense like. We would be here for ages. We could speak about what the Americans have done, even up until recently in Afghanistan. They dropped the mother of all bombs. We talk about the French, what they did in Algeria, the British Empire, which terrorized the entire most of the world. But let's not do that because people can do that in their own time. The question I got for Ishi is, bro, what's happening here when you've got all this history pointing out who the real criminals are? How come people just don't know about this and they get fooled and they fall into this media trap? How is it that these people unashamedly can call other people barbaric and genocidal and stuff like that when their history is made of this? It's not even literate. This is their history. Try to make some sense of this, bro.
Wow, you asked me the really tough question, huh? I just came here for the alleged iftari, man, but no. Actually, I want to go back to a point in history, and I sort of alluded to it very, very briefly, right? And this idea of the concert of Europe, right? There's a prestige to that. We are the Europeans. We are the advanced. We are the ones, are the torchbearers of the most advanced civilization.
Humanity,
right?
yeah.
Humanity. And what we see is there's phases that these people have gone through. So during this, what we spoke about, the French in 1830 occupied Algeria. And we say massacres. They didn't think of Algeria as a land. They saw it as their property. It was a French possession. It wasn't, I don't know how to explain it because I don't know any other people that have done this, right? They actually thought Algeria was theirs. These
It's
people
part
belong
of
to them.
France.
Yeah. Never in history has that happened before. Britain treated India and plundered that land. There was a famine, but these people were beastly people. They were ghastly people. Who cared? It was the Europeans that mattered, because these are the torchbearers, and there's a prestige, and it's the victors that set the precedence. Whereas what America did was they transitioned. They did all the massacres, then they did regime change. They go through many, many phases, right? Look what they did in Iraq. They employed the idea of sanctions. Yeah. So now think about it. Their people, they don't like the killings, so let's do sanctions. What did they do in Iraq? Half a million people died before the fall of Saddam from sanctions alone. Think
But
about that.
like,
Children's,
Madeleine Albright said, it was
yeah,
worth it.
Yeah,
it was worth it. Think
was
about
worth it.
this, right? In Iran, the sanctions are stopping COVID vaccine going in. Who's the evil one? Who's suffering? Is it the Ayatollahs? No chance, right? They say that 40,000 people in Venezuela have been killed by sanctions, right? And it's all these ways to they pacify their people. So first it was the Christian mission, now it's the humanitarian mission. We have to intervene to protect the people and protect ourselves.
Yeah, this is why they continue to highlight this threat of radical Islam, because they constantly need this bogeyman, don't they? And when their populations get war weary because of Afghanistan and Iraq and stuff like that, they then try and invent, even like last couple of days, apparently CNN have been able to speak to Al Qaeda. Now that CNN can speak to Al Qaeda directly, after suddenly they're pulling out of Afghanistan, and suddenly someone from Al Qaeda is on the phone going, "Oh, by the way, let's have a conversation. But we want you out of all of our lands, not just Afghanistan. So we're still here. So come and get us." How convenient, yeah. So this is. Can I just add something though? Your question, Madge, is a key question, and about this idea of how is it that they get away with it?
Yeah, how?
You know what, this is let me explain their attitude. A number of years ago, and if I'll find the reference and I'll put it in the comments of the YouTube video, when they realized that a lot of civilians were dying when they were bombing, rather their attitude wasn't, "Oh, civilians are dying, let's change our strategy." Yeah, remember, so people were saying to them, like, when they were bombing Afghanistan and Iraq, civilians were dying. So rather than thinking, "Oh, what do we do to reduce civilian casualties?" Do you know what their argument was? They were like, we don't need to change our strategy because civilians are dying. We need to change our strategy because if civilians die, their families become radical. Okay, so their attitude isn't, "Oh, we need to reduce civilian death." Remember, I think it was Nelson Mandela. He did a quote where he said something like, "If there's a country that has committed unspeakable atrocities in the world, it is the United States of America. They don't care about human beings." You know what I just mentioned there? That's exactly that. They don't care that they're killing people. They actually cared more that, "Oh, the insurgency will rise. Our enemies will get stronger because we're killing innocent people whose families will then become radical." What kind of a thought process makes you think that, "Oh, the problem isn't killing innocents, the problem is actually, creating more radical people"? I think that just shows you their psyche and the way they think.
But does it go back to what Issue was saying, the fact that the Council of Europe, where they actually feel within themselves that they're superior to these people? Issue?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where it emanates. And I think, the way that they also have to sell it to their own people. But if you think about this is a slight tangent. They've got the media. They've got the media, and it's the media that creates this theater of this threat. This Al Qaeda thing. Sorry, I laughed there because where have they? It's just crazy. It's like they've been playing this game of Where's Wally, and they finally found him, man.
They got hotline with CNN.
Yeah, but it's really serious, right? I mean, think about this, right? Look at, they say freedom of press, right? Look what Edward Snowden did with those, revealing all that stuff, all these conspiracies. They're actually shooting. A drone is one thing. They're actually seeing who they're shooting. These people, right? This is happening live. What
Yeah,
happened? Got
he's
locked
the
up.
one who released that video, didn't he? Where they killed those journalists, those
Yeah,
Reuters journalists.
And this is the
exactly.
point. You know, there's this almost, we're in this theater where we're seeing it, and the only story we're seeing is the one they're portraying. And a lot of this media isn't aimed at anyone else but their own people to pacify them.
But you know what's crazy, the issue? What's crazy though is that, you know, in the old things that they've done, they semi acknowledge them, but they say the times are different. That those times these things happen, right? But they're still doing it right now. That's the illusion. It's like they're probably doing it now on a worse scale than they did it before. But people just are like oblivious to this. It's mad.
You know, I'll tell you something, right? And it's a different topic, right? But you know, look what's happening in America, right? The idea is, you know, everyone is equal. Yet there's a clear difference in blacks and whites. Yeah.
Yeah.
The law doesn't differentiate, but you know what differentiates? Culture, right?
Okay.
The culture of people, right? Just because there's the laws of slavery, did the culture change overnight? No, it didn't. There was that superiority. There's that feeling that this is us and this is them, right? And this is the feeling that's still present, that this is us. We are the best nation that's come on earth. We are the virtuous ones. We're the one that make people virtuous. And, you know, it's important to have these aid missions to show that, you know, we are helping these people out. Never mind you're getting your leg amputated because we've just bombed you to death, right? Look at what they're doing in Yemen. That is outrageous. Yeah, the thing is, right, I know it's Saudi Arabia perpetrating. Who's giving them the weapons? Who's allowing it to occur?
Exactly. Well, that's the key point to highlight, that the styles have changed. So even though I don't think they really care, and they'd more than happily go back in, I think their populations do care though. So they'd more than happily go back into Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria or wherever with feet on the ground. And okay, there's the economic cost of that, and that might be another difficulty. But you can tell that because their populations are not they're still relatively easily duped, but because they've not been able to dupe them as much in recent times, this is where, was it Condoleezza Rice when she talked about constructive chaos?
It was her.
Yes.
Yeah, and that continues to happen in every Muslim country, especially, where what they're doing is they fund oppositions, they, cause bombings between one another. Say the Sunni Shia war that's going on, or the clash that's going on in many Muslim countries. Most of them are facilitated, if not all of them, by America, because they see that if we can keep that rift going, then that chaos remains. And if that chaos remains, then we maintain our superiority over those lands. So this is why this idea of them coming out and saying, oh, okay, let's recognize this as the genocide. It's the most, sickening thing to hear people like that saying that, and people should be so annoyed by it.
And I think as well is what's important here is that we're not here to defend anyone's actions.
Exactly.
It was a messy situation and people got killed, emotions were high, people died from all sides, right? But I think the important point to take away isn't even from a Turkish point of view. I think it's what you guys have said, is that we do see that there is a revival, which has been going on for a while for Islam. And we actually see in that in the last, 5 years, it's accelerated, but just to just say 10 years, what you have seen is the notion of the Ottomans being, really being escalated, whether it's in Ertugrul programs or whether it's these other series about the, Alp Arslan and all these great leaders, right? So I think that's the key that we need to take as Muslims, is that their history is so bad, but they don't want to talk about it. But if they look at the history of Islam for 1400 years, where the Muslim lands became a melting pot, which brought together people of all religions and all colors and all ethnicities, right, under one state, where people live side by side. The reality is the Armenians were living in the Ottoman lands for a long time. Had they wanted to wipe them out, they would have wiped them out a long time ago. In fact, in a lot of the I think Ishi mentioned it, even in parliament and stuff like this, Armenians were present, right? So I think it's important that what we can see is that as Muslims, this is a tactic which is being used. Obviously, there's an agenda politically against Turkey, but I think more so is what the point that Ishi made at the beginning. I think it was a bang on point. Is that what they're trying to do? Is they're trying to show that Muslims are no different than their own history, and that we are barbaric and we are bloodthirsty and we are genocidal, and to put people off. And I think that's the key point that as Muslims we need to take from this thing. And we will say, look, as people are infallible, people make mistakes, but as Muslims we need to be proud of our history. Obviously, things happen which are not going to be good. I mean, obviously, human beings, isn't it? But in 1400 years of history, compare that to the history of France, Britain, America. It's like the difference is the sky and the land. That's how they want to bridge that closer and make us actually look worse than they are. As Muslims, we need to be clear of this, and the only way we can rebuttal this is by knowing our own history.
Even if someone was to say that, and I think we can defend it, but even if someone was to say that the Armenian genocide was a genocide and you just took that and the history of Islam, how long has America been a superpower? What, 60, 70 years? Yeah. And in that 70 years, the number of people that have been killed directly and indirectly because of them exceeds by the percentage would be ridiculous.
Bro, their birth is built on the genocide.
Exactly. So if you added all of that together, it's not even a conversation.
What's the message? What's the message for the viewers, the listeners, guys? Okay. Some people might think, yeah, this is against Turkey, and what's it got to do with me? I'm from Bangladesh, I'm from Pakistan, I'm from Egypt, whatever. Why is this important for Muslims? And what's your message? Final sort of like thoughts on this topic for Muslims? Why is this whether you even think it's an important issue, but why is it important? And what should we take away? Ishi, you want to go first?
I just wanted to give a small example, right? And I was speaking to a Greek guy, and he was saying all this stuff about Turks, right? And I said to him, and it was to do with the issue of Cyprus, because there's obviously like northern Cyprus and southern Cyprus. One half is Greek, one half is Turkish. And I said to him, okay, you both want it, right? From my point of view, you both want it, right? If I'm a neutral party, right? But why is it in that situation? Have you actually thought about it? And he goes, what do you mean? The Turks took it off us? I go, actually, no. If you look at the history, America was concerned about the expansion of communism. And they wanted that split because it was in their interests. Just like this genocide situation, we have to look at not to be entertained by the news, open our eyes and look at things through the lens of Islam and the lens of what people are trying to achieve and the plans that are being implemented on us. Otherwise, you will be prey to every plan. Because if you don't have a plan, you're going to be a part of someone else's plan.
SubhanAllah.
I read that in a chess quote the other day, so it's coming to use.
Yes, Kasparov.
No, I'm not sure who it was, but yeah. But the point is this, right? The only reason why we can have this conversation and deal with this information, what did I say? The news has become entertainment. But the way you can escape is you can build a lens to understand, and that lens for Muslims is Islam. How does this achieve the aims of the Muslims? How does this achieve the aims of non-Muslims? And this is the main lesson that we have to take. How is this calling the genocide affecting the Muslims?
That's my point, yeah.
And that's how you can build a conclusion. Sorry, I know I've simplified it, but I just remember that story having this argument. I said to this person, it's that simple.
Yeah.
And it's all about how you frame it. And we've got to sit and take responsibility. There's two things. You've got to take responsibility and build that frame. Learn a bit of history. Learn the situation. How has this situation arisen? And only then can you progress.
Yeah, bang on, bro. Bang on. Rush?
Yeah, I would just say look at it from a political point of view. I think what happens is dead easy when a story comes out is you dive straight into the story, don't you? And you go, oh, this is why this happened. You get into the detail. You go into, like they say, you go into the micro level. You need to look at the macro level. If you step back and go, wait there a minute, like we discussed right at the beginning, so I won't repeat it, is why now? why is this being, why is it being declared a genocide now, and who has the most to benefit and why? As a Muslim, if we consider every political action, especially that America carries out because they're the superpower, then and it's links to Ish's point about it looking through it that lens, then I think we'll be a lot more aware, and then we'll go, actually, this is how to deal with that or discuss it with someone, because now we realize why that action's been carried out right this minute.
Yeah, no. I think that's really good advice and sound advice for all the listeners and viewers. And look, you may differ to what we're saying, but the important thing is you ask the question.
The thing is, there can be a discussion. The Armenian genocide, people can discuss from both sides. I've seen lots of evidence and of it being clearly that it couldn't have been that many people. And there's historians that are reputable historians that have spoken about going, no, there's a reason why this happened. It wasn't genocide. The Armenian uprising needed to be quelled, or then people needed to be moved. And there's genuine at least you can have a discussion. With the American ones that we've discussed, what they did in how they dealt with people in Fallujah, how they dealt with people, the Guantanamo, even to this day, all of the issues that you paint America with, the native Indians, there's no discussion. There's absolutely there's no defense. Theirs has absolutely no defense, whereas some of what the Muslims may have done, then there's reasoning behind it. There's a defense behind it.
Yeah, of course.
And then there's hardly any.
And if they've done wrong, then we acknowledge that. But at the same time, we mention things like when the Crusaders came to Palestine, Al-Quds, that the Christians there fought, against the Crusaders. That the Crusaders, when they massacred the people of Al-Quds, they never just killed Muslims; they killed the Christians that were there,
everybody,
and Jews, because those people were sort of like were living in that area, right? And this is something which, from their history, I think they are actually jealous, and they're ashamed how their ideology actually brings divisions, and how Islam actually can unite people. And even if people do not remain, they want to remain with their own religions, they can live in peace and security along the Muslims. So, Jazakallah, guys, really some really good insight there, and a really good way of looking at this event of not really the Armenian event, what happened, because we didn't go to. I know, but the issue was like he wasn't even warming up. Like when you start the car, and you got to give it 5 minutes. He just turned the ignition. I know he was firing. He's ready to go. But I know Rush is in a bit of a rush today, so I couldn't let him get up to heat, because it would have been difficult to stop him. But certainly, we will bring Brother Ishti back for another podcast where we'll have more time. Before we end this podcast, brothers, 2 events, historical events, which should fill us with pride, motivation, honor, have happened. Well, historically happened on the 17th of Ramadan and on the 20th of Ramadan. We see on the 17th of Ramadan is the anniversary of the Battle of Badr, and we see the 20th, which is today, is the anniversary of the conquest of Makkah, Fatah Makkah. Just wanted to, I know time is restricted here, but just wanted to get a few thoughts from yourselves, to maybe some gems of lessons for our listeners to take away, or your thoughts on these 2 amazing events that occurred 1400 years ago. Rush, I'll start off with you, bro. Any thoughts that you want to add to that?
I just want to give a quick one, because I mentioned this, or I posed this question to the congregation at the khutbah on Friday. I was talking about Badr, and I posed a question. I was like saying that compare the Ansar and compare the people of Quraysh, those who opposed the Prophet ﷺ and those who supported him. And then that links to both Badr and Fath Makkah, because you see that at Badr, it was those who, those people, the Ansar, they chose difficulty. They didn't choose ease. They chose difficulty, even though they were not from the people of Makkah and the people of the Prophet ﷺ's tribe. They chose difficulty, and then Allah blessed them with being the Ansar and the people that are spoke about in such high regard. And then the people of Quraysh, those were the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's own people, and only a few people chose to accept him. The majority didn't. So what I posed to the congregation is, who would you have been? If you were there at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would you have been the ones that chose ease and stuck to your forefathers' religion, like the Quraysh did, or would you have been like the Ansar who chose difficulty and were willing to go up against everyone, and therefore at Badr you were able to go up against such a stronger army and Allah came and helped you? Yeah. And I think it got everybody reflecting, and I think it links to today as well. It links to today, the fact that these anniversaries we're looking back at, if we're not willing to do something for the Muslims today, then would we really have been from the Ansar, or would we have just been those people who were happy with the status quo? Just something I want to leave people to think about.
Deep, bro. You just took people deep into the ocean there, but inshallah, hopefully they can have some thought and reflect on this. And Brother Ishi?
I'd prepared a couple of points, but I'll mention a point I find inspirational, right? And this is a personal thing to me. And you know, when you look in the first year of Medina, when the Prophet ﷺ established Medina al-Munawwara, right? Who were these people? The Muhajirun, immigrants, new people, and the Ansar who'd been fighting. Yeah. So you know, we talk about unity in a spiritual sense. So what does the Prophet ﷺ do? What did he do, right? He obviously they taught him the Aqidah of Islam, the idea of Islam, right? And he made it a physical unity. That these people, the Prophet ﷺ said to them, "You're one nation apart from all others." And he made them brothers. They would inherit each other and they worked together. It wasn't just a spiritual thing. The Aqidah became manifest in them. They were living it.
Physical thing.
And there's this little sort of speech by Sa'd ibn Mu'adh on the way to Badr, right? Because, you know, at the Treaty of Aqaba, not the Treaty of Aqaba, the Pledge of Aqaba, sorry, yes. You know, the Ansar, the people of Medina or Yathrib at the time, they said, we'd give you protection in Medina. Now it's come to Badr, they're going to war. They'd only prepared for a raid. So the Prophet ﷺ wanted to hear what the Ansar thought. And Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, you know, the great Sahaba, you know, when he passed away, the Prophet ﷺ, the throne of Allah has shaken. This is such a calamitous occasion, right? So he said, we believe in you. So he's talking about what he believes in, right? And the Prophet ﷺ is concerned, how far is they going to be willing to go? We believe in you and we bear witness that you bring the truth. So, you know, as all Muslims, they believe, yeah? We have given you our oaths and agreement to listen and obey all your commands, just like us. We listen and obey. So, but this is the difference. Proceed as ever you decide, we are with you. So he's not saying that you decide, it's your decision. Why, you know, at the end of the day, we're Muslims, we're going to go with you. And this is the reality of a Muslim. There was no excuse. There's no, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I swear, even if you were to plunge into the sea, we'd go. We're ready. We're stoic and we're trustworthy in battle. He's saying what we're going to bring to the table, not what Islam can do for you, what we can do for Islam today.
That's the attitude.
That's the attitude of Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, and that's why he's so highly praised.
Yeah.
And this is interestingly, he didn't say, you know, hopefully we do this. He said, let us hope that God will give you pleasure in us. He will make you happy with what we do. He's not seeking for his own pleasure. He's seeking for the pleasure of the Prophet ﷺ. This is what the fruit of Iman is. Go forward with God's blessing, not with our blessing that we're going to go and help you. He knows where victory comes from. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the thing. You know, 313 of people like this, unified spiritually, physical. What's 1,000 people?
Yeah, man.
And this is what unity does. We've been trapped by nationalism, these ethnic issues. I can see you looking at the clock, so I'll stop there. The thing is, I get like, obviously, I find this inspirational.
That's an amazing point, because I think we have this like a defeatist attitude sometimes, don't we? What we don't realize is, like you've just highlighted, and like Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, and how he gave that, when he gave that speech, yeah. imagine if you were there, you'd have your hairs would be standing up on your hands, because that attitude of saying however difficult the situation is, we're with you. Yeah, at the end of the day, we're with you, and we fear today because we think, oh, okay, linking it to what we discussed already. Oh, America are too strong, or we're all of these split up nations, countries, separate. We can't do anything. Yeah, but look at some of the stuff that we've been posting on Voice of the Ummah. I don't know if you've seen some of it, where we're highlighting the strategic land of the Muslims. We're highlighting the military capability of the Muslims. We're going to be, over the coming days, highlighting the economic might of the Muslims and the Muslim lands. You see, we have all of this, and we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by our sides, which is even more important than all of that. Yet we have a defeatist attitude. And look at the Muslims of Badr and the Muslims at that time, how they had that confidence that because they were on the truth, they were able to proceed forward. And you know what? If you don't make it and you die in battle, you still win, because you win in the next life, don't you?
Yeah, bro. I mean, you're the one in a hurry, bro. If you want to carry on speaking, I'm happy. I'm happy to listen to you. You know what I mean? I'm happy to listen.
2 minutes. 2 minutes. Go for it.
You know what I mean? But you're the one that's in a hurry, yeah.
No, I'll give you your 2 minutes of
no. I don't need 2
well.
minutes. I don't need 2 minutes, man. Let's end it there, because you need to download the podcast as well. So I can't add anything to what you guys have said. It's amazing points, man. And I just hope that I've certainly benefited from it, and I'm sure that those people watching and listening to this podcast will certainly benefit and feel motivated as well. So on that note, Jazakallah khair for you guys to spare some time today on this podcast, and a message to all our listeners and viewers. It's month of Ramadan. The last 10 days are coming up. Put your foot on the pedal. Don't slow down. Speed up, and also join the cause. Support us. Subscribe to our that's an old school thing, register. Subscribe to our platforms, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Share it with family and friends, and yeah, really, inshallah, let's make the most of these last 10 days. So on that note, Jazakallah khair for everyone who is watching and listening to this, and inshallah ta'ala, we will see you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thanks for watching that video. For more exclusive videos, please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget, you can listen to some of our shows wherever you are, because we're also available on all popular podcast platforms. And for more Voice of the Ummah content, make sure you check out the links to all of our social media platforms in the description below.